At the very end of the June 9th Nintendo Direct, they announced a remake of Ocarina of Time coming to Switch 2 this year. So, I thought it was about time for another Zelda community discussion, which I posted last week. However, when I was putting feelers out there to assemble a panel, I received way more responses than I anticipated, and I felt bad turning so many people away. So screw it, we're doing another one. I've brought together another group of talented content creators to discuss all of our thoughts on the newly announced remake of Ocarina of Time. Just a quick spoiler warning, we of course discuss the story of the original Ocarina of Time, as well as some other Zelda titles in this video. With that out of the way, let's hop into it with a quick round of introductions. I'm Cap Bergerson, and I'll once more be your host for this discussion.
I'm Gabe, also Gabora. I make Zelda theory videos, used to make a lot of shorts, a couple long form videos. I haven't been able to upload in a long time because work's been too busy, but I've always got some stuff that I'm working on that I hope to release soon, and I'm happy to be here.
Hi everybody, I'm Adam, probably better known as Hyrule Gamer on YouTube, and I also make Zelda lore, theory, mysteries, discussions, anything Zelda really. I'm probably also a little well known for my healthy, in quotation marks, obsession with Twilight Princess, but I'll put that to the side today so we can discuss the other big Zelda game.
Hello everyone, I'm Lily. I go by Lily Hyrule on YouTube, and I've been working on some Zelda videos, streaming as well, a few unboxing videos as well. Lately, I think the reaction videos are kind of getting a little bit more attention, so I guess it's just my love for Zelda, growing up with Zelda. So yeah, you can find me pretty much everywhere as Lily Hyrule.
Hey y'all, Little Bean Green here. You can find me on YouTube under the same name. I make an assortment of Zelda content. I find that the conversations around the games are just as, if not more, compelling as the content within the games themselves. So I'm all over the place. But that makes a conversation like today perfect for me.
Well, hi there. I'm Rin. I have a YouTube channel called Rin's Legendarium, and it focuses on Zelda fanfiction narration.
Excellent. So, just to kick off the conversation, I just want to kind of establish for the audience where everyone sort of falls on the spectrum of how we're feeling about this remake, or about the reveal, and get everyone just to quickly give just a very, not too into the weeds of it, but just a general thought of how we're feeling about the remake, whether you love it, you hate it, you're hyped, you're a hater, etc. Just kind of establish everybody's stance before we get into more specific topics. For me, very mixed feelings. Cautiously optimistic is how I would be describing myself right now, even though my reaction video, a lot of people assume I'm a hater, but it's caution.
I was gonna say hater.
No,
no, just kidding.
Caution.
Yeah, I would say on its own, I'm skeptical. The art style, I know, has all the Unreal kind of comparisons, and I have to admit, the first time I saw it, it was not like love at first sight in the way like maybe Breath of the Wild was, but at the same time, Nintendo has such a good track record. I know a lot of people have criticized the 3DS remakes. I don't share any of those criticisms. I really liked the 3DS games. Link's Awakening, Switch, absolutely loved. And the original, like the black and white original on the Game Boy, that was like one of my favorite games of all time. So the fact that they could remake that and I still loved it just shows like how good they are at doing this stuff. So even though my first reaction is like kind of, I don't know, I'm scared, I think they're going to pull it off because they have such a good track record for me.
I feel like I'm a little bit easy to win over when it comes to Zelda news. I build it up so much. So I think initially I was won over quite easily and very excited still now. But I think has it been 2 weeks now, I think, maybe?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
I feel like as time's went on, I've sort of actually thought about it more. The initial rush is sort of died down and I'm excited, and I'd say instead of cautiously, I'd say I'm curiously excited. I'm excited, but I feel like I just need a little more to fully get into that sort of hype mode, I guess you could say.
Mixed feelings all the way. I kind of knew that this was coming, but I was so scared at first. I'm still scared. Like I'm a little bit concerned. But to Gabe's point about Nintendo being able to pull this off, if you think about it, this is going to be the first 3D Zelda game remade, and I'm scared. They did amazingly with Link's Awakening. Of course, I loved it. They fixed a lot of things, but this, I'm a little bit concerned because this was my first Zelda game that I ever played when I was a kid. So as long as they don't mess around with the story, I guess that's my take. Like I really hope that they are very, very faithful. But But at the same time, I'm very excited. Like, I can't really describe like the entire feeling and memories that went through my mind just by looking at that teaser, because it wasn't even a trailer, it was just a teaser. So yeah, I have mixed feelings all the way, but I'm also have like, I would say like 30% confident that they're gonna do okay. But I just don't want to have like my hopes high up and crushed. Also, I do want to be a bit more cautious as well, because this is not just for us. I think it's for, of course, they want others to experience the beauty of Ocarina of Time for the first time. So it's not just me. Like, a lot of people are going to experience this. So I'm excited for that.
That's fair. And, you brought up like this being your first game. I think that's like such a valid thing that I think like everyone has like a special place for their first Zelda game. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, it's hard to describe, but you know what I mean. So
yeah, no, and especially when I watched your video and you were like, I specifically asked not for this like to happen. That was also my feeling when I saw it, like, and then I was so in disbelief, like, it's true. Like, everything that I've been reading about and everything I've been hearing about is true. They're actually remaking this. And of all the Zeldas out there, I think Ocarina of Time was the one. In a way, I didn't want it, but at the same time, I'm very excited to know or to learn how they're going to manage to do this, like how they're going to do this, how they're going to remake or reimagine, whichever is the case. We don't know yet. But yeah.
I would say my feelings are complicated. I'm sort of a reverse Adam, I think, where initially, viscerally, I was very against it. Ocarina of Time was also my first game, but I don't think I'm very protective of it. I never asked for a remake. And I feel like the argument, for me at least, is I would rather have something new than a remake of something else. Mm-hmm. But since it does exist, I am intrigued to see what they do. And I think that the comparisons between the original and the 3DS and this are going to be obvious, that those will come up. I'm interested in trying to, I guess, analyze it or see it as its own thing and see how it can stand on its own. Because I think, at least for me and maybe some other fans of Zelda, it always seems like the comparisons are to the last game or to the game that this thing is most similar to. And it's hard sometimes to just take the games as they are. So it'll be interesting because it's a remake, obviously. It has a connection to an old game, but it also could be its own thing. So I think that'll be interesting to see as it's revealed.
You have a video on your channel about the whole series living in the shadow of Ocarina of Time in a way. And, not to like tell you what to do, but like I almost feel like it'll be interesting to kind of revisit that after this game has had time to sort of be out there, and to that point as well, the other thing you said about like games being compared to each other, like I'm sure Adam is very familiar with this discourse where people just be like, a Twilight Princess is just Ocarina of Time again, and they don't really look at the nuance of like what it does to be its own thing. Do you know what I mean? And I feel like it's reductive in a way that's not good discourse. So I'm curious to see what you put out in the future, dude. Rin, how are we feeling?
So we're feeling pretty dang good about it. I am very optimistic. Ocarina of Time was not my first Zelda game. It was my second. The first was A Link to the Past, but I did play Ocarina when it released. And so for me, it still had an extreme impact on my childhood and on who I became as a person and as a writer. So this event is monumental for me, because not only are we getting a live action Zelda movie, which has been one of my dreams since I first ever played Ocarina of Time, but now we're also getting this remake of the very game that kind of set my life in motion. That sounds dramatic, but I really truly mean it. Like, it had a huge impact on me. So I'm very excited. I'm very optimistic, and I'll get into the reasons why probably here in a bit.
Right on. So we have kind of a spread, I think, of mostly positive with varying levels of skepticism. Rin, we have that in common as well, that A Link to the Past was also my first Zelda game, but Ocarina, I always say it was the first Zelda game where I was actually like old enough and good enough at games to actually beat it. I am definitely looking forward to seeing people kind of fall in love with this story, because a lot of people just haven't played it. They've only played Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, didn't go back to any of the old games. And I'll say firsthand, I've seen my son fall in love with the original version of Ocarina of Time. And so like that's an exciting feeling by proxy. So to get into some of the more specific topics, from the very small amount we've seen of the art direction, of the visuals, is this the type of art direction we feel enthused about? Is this the look we like? How do we feel about that specifically?
I wanted to bring up Adam here because he loves and absolutely obsessed with Twilight Princess. And Cap, you mentioned something that is true. Like, a lot of people compare Ocarina of Time with Twilight Princess. Twilight Princess being like the more realistic Ocarina of Time that everybody wanted. When I disagree completely. Like, Twilight Princess is a completely different story. But I think that based on what I saw, I'm not sure if they're gonna stay with a kind of cartoonish kind of style. I feel they are gonna be focusing a little bit more on realism, but I'm not 100% that this is the path that I want for Ocarina of Time. I'm a little bit concerned. Based on what I saw, it's like, it looks beautifully, like it looks stunning, visually speaking, but is it going to be really what we're gonna get? That's my other question, because you guys remember the E3 demo for Twilight Princess, right?
Oh, yeah.
And we never got that. So, yeah, that's my take.
I mean, this is a slight tangent, but like you're saying with Twilight Princess, that comparison, like I always feel like it's reductive that like, no, Twilight Princess is good on its own merits, not because of Ocarina of Time or whatever. But this, a lot of Twilight Princess comparison, I don't feel like this evokes Twilight Princess for me. I mean, again, a very short reveal, but I don't look at this and think, oh, this is now modern Twilight Princess, because even though people refer to Twilight Princess as the quote-unquote realistic Zelda, I feel like it really does have its own visual identity that you won't find with other contemporary realistic games. You know what I mean?
Sort of to your point, I think these visuals don't look bad, but to me, they look generic. And again, all of this is coded with, I'm not married to any of these opinions because we only saw them for 2 seconds, but Twilight Princess is very distinct from any other sort of realistic game of its generations, I would say. But
yeah.
This feels like, it's like when I was watching the Summerfest, whatever it was, the other showcases, and it seemed like all the game's art styles, it was like, oh, this is just realistic 3D. And obviously we saw more stuff, but it seemed like this version of Ocarina of Time could slot into there and fit in with one of those games. And I think even though the original and Majora's Mask were going for realism, the technical limitations of that, I think, were actually a strong point. Because things were muddy, textures were muddy, things were not as crisp or detailed, more of your imagination could fill in those things, which I think works better for Zelda. And I think that's why the cel-shaded look worked for the Era of the Wilds games, because there was just enough detail in them to tell you what you needed to know. You knew grass that you could light on fire was different than grass that you couldn't. You knew a metal ball from a rock ball, whatever. That's not to say that I think that any new iteration should be cel-shaded. I just think with so much detail, with Link having a tunic where you can see every weave of grass, it's going to be a different experience. And whether that'll be good or bad, time will tell. But it's certainly different.
You know, as a kid, I remember playing the game for the very first time and thinking to myself, wow, this looks so real. And yeah, I was a kid and, you know, it was a new style of gaming that we hadn't really seen yet. But for me, I think the reason that I'm like pretty okay with the graphics as we've seen them so far is because it sort of reinvokes that feeling for me that I had as a kid. Even though they were all just polygons put together, my brain was still like, oh my gosh, this is like a real world. I feel like I'm in it. And I think that might be the reason that Nintendo decided to go this direction, because I feel like a lot of people felt that way, at least back then. I don't know about now, but for us old people, it's something I look back on where I'm like, yeah, I really truly felt like these graphics were incredibly realistic. And so for them to be realistic now, it makes sense to me. I don't mind it. I really don't. While I see the similarities to Unreal, it still looks better than that. Something else about Unreal is there's a strange thing with character movements. You've probably noticed it. They look very unnatural to me, like very stilted, kind of. I can only assume that Nintendo is going to have that down pat. I truly think that people are going to be pleasantly surprised at how it ends up looking as a whole. And it's especially going to perform well on the Switch too. We already know that. So I think I'm most excited to see what the environments are going to look like.
It's funny though, is that you mentioned it like feeling like you were stepping into a real world, because like games are art and art is super subjective. So it's like everyone's sort of experience peering into these worlds is going to be different. But like for me, as a kid, Ocarina of Time was very much my escapism. So for me, it was like stepping out of the real world and into a fairy tale for a moment so that I could get away from like my stepdad yelling at something or about something or another. You know what I mean? And so that maybe was too real for a moment, but the point is escapism was a good thing, you know, like being able to sort of retreat into this fairy tale. And I always loved and like pored over all of the like artwork. Like I had that I still actually have it sitting a meter away from me at the Prima guide. So I would like pore over the maps of like dungeons and stuff in there, and it's filled with gorgeous artwork. And so I guess especially as a kid, like my brain would start to kind of conflate these things of like the art in those books. I know that those were drawn after the fact as an interpretation of the game's visuals, not the other way around, but that's still the official art that came with the game. And that association is really strong for me, I guess. I think it's gorgeous artwork. I would almost describe it more as fantastical than real, but I mean, those things don't have to be necessarily mutually exclusive either. But it's interesting, like just sort of seeing like how, you know, two people can look at the same piece of art and feel such different sort of, or have such different takes on it, I guess, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I see where you're coming from too. My brain just automatically goes back to the way I felt as a child. And I don't know, when I say realistic, I guess I don't necessarily mean like the real world.
Sure.
It was, you know, obviously fantastical and fairy tale like, but it was just so much more than what we had, you know, from top down Zelda. So maybe realistic isn't the right word to use, but I do like how you described it for sure.
No, what I'm trying to say, Rin, is that your personal feelings are incorrect, factual. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
No, I do want to add like to Cap's point as well, because while I was growing up, this was my first, Zelda game, and I was going through a very difficult situation in my life as well. My parents were getting divorced. I was just a kid, and I didn't really understood a lot of things that were happening. And in my example, I was not able to play Ocarina of Time in my native language because it wasn't available in Spanish for me. It was available only in English. So you can imagine, trying to figure things out, learning the language. And it was an escape route for me. Being able to just hear that Hyrule theme music as soon as you're able to hop out of the Kiri forest and exploring what it was supposed to be a quote-unquote open world. That was the escape for me going through that situation. And I've seen a lot of people adding comments to the reaction that I uploaded on my channel, and they're literally just typing that, like saying that they have been going through a very difficult situation in their lives when they were playing this game. So this is real. Like I feel that a lot of people actually went through a lot of difficult situations, and Ocarina of Time was their way of escaping that. So it's true.
I mean, something I wanted to highlight real quick was the point Rin made about back in the day, sort of games having that feeling of this feels so real, even though they don't necessarily look realistic. It's the fact that they feel realistic. That's the sort of vibe I got from the initial art style, that sort of exact feeling of, I know this isn't real, this isn't what the real world looks like, but it just felt immersive to me, and that was the first thing that stood out. I will admit, obviously, I do feel like we need to see more. I think that's a pretty general opinion across the board for a lot of people, that it's hard to form a full take on how they feel about it with what we've got. But generally, I sort of just, to be honest, I just wanted to say, just to put the opinion out there, I actually do quite like the style, and I'm honestly really excited to see more of it, because I think it's cool that, whilst the game is also for fans who experienced the game originally, I think it's cool that the current generation are going to get their own experience with it, something that isn't the exact same as what we got. Still sort of generally the same, but I don't know, it's just, I think I lie more on the excited to see more side than the cautiously excited. I really like the vibe that they've gone for. I like that the Zelda team are always trying new looks and trying new things. I think it's something they've proven over the years that they're great at, and I think to some degree, not to stir things, but I think to some degree, some fans online need to give them a little more respect with what they're doing with the art style. I've seen some people really freak out about it, and I don't know, I think you just gotta have a little faith.
That's fair. And I do appreciate your point about like the Zelda team has always tried new looks for the series. You know, they've tried different outfits on, as it were. And this art direction is almost certainly not going to be a permanent thing. You know, like it's probably going to be like maybe 2 games and then they're going to try something else. I kind of always think back to when Wind Waker was first like announced and revealed and how I did not like the art direction, but was won over by how good the game is. And now I really like the visuals of Wind Waker, right? You know, I got over that as soon as I actually played the game. So like, even as someone who's more of a skeptic, I've been wrong before and I'm like so ready to be won over.
So for me, like I said, it wasn't love at first sight, but I have faith that they'll pull it off and that it'll grow on me. Like you guys have said, like as a child, you know, how impactful this game was on you. Same for me. I mean, Ocarina of Time is my favorite game of all time. And so I think part of my initial reaction is because it's like hallowed ground for me. It's like, you know, you can't improve on perfection type thing, but I think it will grow on me and, you know, we need to see more of it. Who knows? And then like you're saying just about how like this style not being here to stay, you know, like there is this interesting pattern that Game Over Jesse would talk about, how we're saying like I wish they would have just like made a new game or something instead of remaking this one. Jesse would talk about how like they'll remake a game and then they'll use that engine to make a new game, like A Link Between Worlds was kind of like a remake of A Link to the Past, and then they use that engine to make Triforce Heroes. Link's Awakening Switch, they remade that. I remember thinking at the time like, oh, I wish they would have spent all that effort making a new game, but like, you know, they kind of do that and then they use that engine to make Echoes of Wisdom, you know. So I do think maybe like that'll happen here. They'll do this and they'll use that style to make like a new game, and I'm really looking forward to that.
Even Wind Waker HD was used to test the lighting engine that they would use in Breath of the Wild, for example, right? So
I wanted to ask Gabe, what is going to be your feeling when you see Gabora twisting its head? And you know, you have to tell us what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm stoked. You know what? I'm more stoked to hear, because I assume like the music's all gonna get upgraded. You know, it has to, right? There's no way they're gonna use the original music. So I think I'm more so just like so excited for the new rendition of his theme. It's like I use that
sweet,
in all of my videos. So you'll definitely be hearing that theme in like all of my videos. I know it's gonna slap, so I'm looking forward to it.
That's a good segue, actually, because music was going to be my next topic anyway, so perfect segue. So the music, we heard only a little bit in the trailer, and it could just be a theme made just for the trailer, because they've done that before. Both Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom had trailer themes that were not in the game. But to your point, Gabe, the music is most likely to get full like reorchestration, I assume. How are we feeling about what we've heard so far on the music, and anything you're excited about with that, or not excited, or anything in between?
From what we heard in the trailer, I thought it was beautiful. I thought they did a great job. And again, I think they have such a good track record of when they redo things, it sounds great. Like in Link's Awakening Switch version, like those songs were great on the Game Boy, but what they did to them are amazing. You know, Ocarina of Time, like those songs mean so much to me, but I don't think they're going to mess them up. The originals are perfect. Somehow I think they're going to make them even more perfect.
Yeah, there's a reason so many of those themes are so enduring, even though like the hardware has aged, the N64, but like the music is timeless in a way. I actually kind of am curious if playing the Ocarina, like how much like a real woodwind it's gonna sound like, you know. Just as a side note, you know, I played just the other day the demo for Star Fox, and that's like a almost one-to-one remake of Star Fox 64, but the music in that demo is so good, and it's just those same old themes from the N64 game but put through an orchestra, and it's magnificent. So yeah, I'm very excited for that.
Cap, I was going to say that exact same thing. I was playing the Star Fox demo as a sort of an appetizer to this, and I completely agree that just the orchestrations of those old themes it's awesome. And I think it's weird. I think the music is going to be great. I think the little stuff they gave us in that little teaser was great. The music itself is sort of analogous to Ocarina of Time as a whole, where that game is iconic. The music in that game is iconic, but for some reason I don't feel the same sort of reticence towards the music, and that if they ran it through an orchestra, which is you know, the updated graphics version of MIDI files styles or whatever was in the original N64 version, that it's just going to be better. Like, I don't have any doubts about the music. And I think that's largely carried by just the melodies are so good. Maybe they'll do something with some dynamics and stuff when you're in an area, so you're not just hearing Daria's song the whole time in the Lost Woods or something. They'll change it up a little bit somehow or remix it or something like that. But I think just the staple songs from the game are too good of a base that I think if you orchestrate them, the only thing that's going to happen is they're going to sound better.
It's an interesting point because, like in Breath of the Wild, the way the music transitions as an open world, like I don't know if they're going to need to have loading areas or screens in this game, right? Like, how are they going to transition? Like, once you step out of Kokiri Forest on the Hyrule field, is it going to load or is it going to go straight into it? And then how are they going to like transition that music, you know?
Now that you're mentioning Star Fox, Koji Kondo was the one, working on the music for Star Fox 64, not specifically Star Fox, because for Star Fox, he actually did the sound effects. But in The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, he did the whole music. This is fully like Koji Kondo's composition, right? So that makes me to Gabe's point as well, depending on the direction that they're going to take gameplay-wise for Ocarina of Time, because what if they do like something a little bit more open world, or if they do like kind of mix with Echoes of Wisdom, having the linear path as well as the exploration, how are they going to integrate, instead of having a load screen or something, for it to be completely immersive? I'm not sure who's going to be taking care of the music or the composer. And like you said, Cap, it could be just music that we heard on this first teaser, and what we're going to get on the game is going to be completely different. But fully orchestrated, yes, I agree. That's something that really Nintendo's going to be pushing for, especially after Skyward Sword. So I'm feeling very confident. It's just that it'll depend on what direction they're going to go for, especially if they're going to bring Koji Kondo, I don't know, probably as a supervisor, a composer supervising the entire music in the game or whatnot. I haven't played the demo for Star Fox, but if you guys are saying that it's just amazing, I'm very confident that the music is just going to be great. I'm feeling very positive about it.
There's a few tracks that are on the Nintendo Music app from Star Fox as well. It's just incredible what they did with that. It is the same compositions. It's an orchestra instead of MIDI, and that Meteo theme is just so good. But yeah, no, I have no doubt about that. And you brought up Skyward Sword, and I was just thinking, it came with the CD with the orchestration, and they had like a bunch of themes from old songs, or from old games, sorry, on that CD as well. So we've gotten some taste of it, I think. They're already good, but how much greater they can even be still. Yeah, it excites me for sure.
I have a CD from the early 2000s. It's literally the orchestrated Ocarina of Time music, and it's official.
Rin, you've been keeping this from me all this time.
I'm pretty sure I sent a picture of it in the Discord at some point. Maybe not, but I will now. And it's like, gosh, probably maybe the year 2000, 2001, maybe a little later. It doesn't have every single song, I don't think, but it has most of them, and they're amazing. I played the crap out of that CD. But yeah, if it's anything like that, I don't have any worries about it either. I'm really excited. I think they're going to kill it. Just the way that they orchestrated that music in the teaser, the way they used those few notes to tug at our nostalgia, it was just genius. So I can't wait. I'm really excited for the music.
Yeah, I think they know what they're doing. I think they know exactly what Ocarina of Time fans want to hear, and it's the entire soundtrack remade. Yeah, I feel like it's probably the area that's got the least amount of concern with fans. I feel like it's pretty hard to mess up Ocarina of Time soundtrack, whatever style they decide to do it in. I think it'll be a banger either way.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like their track record with Zelda music is so stellar. Yeah.
Spoilers for the boss theme in Star Fox. There's a choir that sings in it now. There are voices, and it's really cool. So even if they just reorchestrate the old songs, what they add and what they change and how they change it, I think is going to be really interesting.
That instantly made me think about what will the Temple of Time theme sound like when you said the sort of choir. I can only imagine the Temple of Time theme in that style.
Yeah. Oh wow,
like,
yeah.
Temple.
Yeah.
Yeah, because even I'm thinking about like the times since Ocarina of Time that we've heard that theme. I think in the version in Twilight Princess is, I have to listen to it again to say for sure, but as far as I remember, it's largely identical. And then in Breath of the Wild, it's just broken piano, which fits for that game. Don't get me wrong, like that is the vibe they were going for. But yeah, if they're going full orchestra and they bring in full choir, that could be really quite an auditory sort of feeling. Because that, I don't know, like as a kid, sometimes I would just stand in the Temple of Time and like feel it, you know what I mean? I did that with a lot of places in this game. It would just stand somewhere to like feel the music. Temple of Time, Forest Temple, Gerudo Valley are like the standout ones in my head, you know?
Well, like you said too, a lot of people played Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom and haven't really explored the rest of the series. It'll be interesting to see what they think based on the music from that game, which is sort of more subtle and broken, like you said, Cap, to Ocarina's bombasticness.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see.
One thing that I wanted to point out is that it has been a trend when it comes to the main instruments that we see in the games. Like Breath of the Wild was the piano. Tears of the Kingdom, I would say the sax a little bit more, like trumpets, and a little bit more like, and Echoes of Wisdom was violin. So here is going to be Ocarina. And talking about that, hopefully I don't get too distracted from this, but I'm very curious and excited to know how they're going to be working with the Ocarina mechanics.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to see the internet flooded with a bunch of people making songs just with the Ocarina. So I'm kind of thinking like all of those cumbias like da-na-na-na-na, da-na-na-na. Have you seen you guys like those in Majora's Mask? It's so hilarious.
Oh, yeah.
I'm so excited for that.
I really like those. Like I've seen videos where someone records several versions that play like Africa by Toto with the full band in Majora's Mask. That would be really cool to see what people do with the actual playing music mechanic of this game, because honestly that's something I have missed a lot in Zelda.
Yeah,
and
the
I feel
instruments.
like ironically that it like was at its peak in its first outing on the N64, both the N64 games I should say, but like after that it felt like, you know, Wind Waker did it fine, and then Twilight Princess, the wolf howling sections were so limited that it never really got a chance to shine, I don't think. Not to knock Twilight Princess too much, it does other things great, but that
you
but that specifically I felt like it was underutilized is the main thing, I think.
Yeah,
because you couldn't just whip it out and do it anywhere, which I should phrase differently, but
Yikes.
yes, exactly.
Oh, Spirit Tracks got pretty close as well, but the harp in Skyward Sword just didn't capture that feeling of like being able to really play music, you know what I mean? So I'm kind of looking forward to seeing what they do with it here. Hopefully they don't just make it like a menu thing. If it was just like press a song in the menu and now you've played it, you know?
Oh, that would break my heart.
Yeah, me too.
Because, you know, I think one of the things where some of the music in that game is so well remembered is because not only is it a song you heard a lot, but like doing the act of playing the music also sort of does something to your brain. It makes it stick in there even harder, I think.
You know, that'd be like a quality of life thing, right? They'd be worried that people like wouldn't want to do that or couldn't play the song, so they're trying to make it easier. But as you're saying, like, Daniel, your kid plays the game and they don't struggle with it, right? My daughter plays it, and, you know, she was playing when she was 7 years old and she didn't struggle with it. So I hope they don't make that decision. You know, the new generation of gamers can handle it.
They can handle it. I think that's a thing where people talk about quality of life stuff, and there's quality of life stuff I definitely want to see. Some of which we already saw in the 3DS version, like the iron boots and stuff. But like at the same time, I think people underestimate kids, especially Ocarina of Time. Like in many ways, that game did a good job of guiding the player without necessarily always overtly hand-holding. Don't underestimate the kids is what I'm saying. The kids must play the music.
I think the act of actually playing the notes goes a long way in inhabiting the character too, and so to take it out as a quality of life quote unquote decision is, I think, missing the larger picture of what Ocarina of Time is.
Absolutely, because I think that adds something to Link's character too. You know, he's this hero who's been thrust into this role, but at the same time he plays music. That's something that's like kind of unique to Zelda, I think. You know, Master Chief does not whip out a synthesizer and you know, like
maybe he should.
Maybe he should. I would unironically be there for that, actually. But it is something that I think is really endearing, like really lovable about Zelda, is that it has this sort of like reprieve from the action, and also that the music playing has tangible effects.
It's gameplay.
Yeah, it's gameplay. Yeah, exactly.
Just wanted to add, if you guys have ever heard of this, but there is this viral meme, but in Latin America, of Link. In Spanish is Duende Melodia, which literally translates to Melody the Elf. So that's essentially Link. It's so funny. I'm going to share it whenever I can, but it's so funny.
I love that. Just a slight transition to the next topic. Still on the audio side of things, voice acting, we saw, or heard, I should say, narration in the trailer. Do we think this is a sign of the game having voice acting? Do we want the game to have voice acting, and to what extent? Whether that be just how Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom handled it, of just important cutscenes, or if we want the, say, Skyrim approach of every NPC having every line voiced, or somewhere in between, or not at all. How are we feeling about that prospect?
It's really interesting because whilst it's sort of like not necessarily new to Zelda, because I guess it was like a big thing in 2017 with Breath of the Wild, that's almost 10 years ago now, so it's not new, but it's still kind of new in terms of actually the amount of games it's in, voice acting. I don't know. I mean, the narration thing really did get me thinking about, will there be full voice acting in the game? And I think I'm at a point where I think it's more than welcome. I know it's not true to the original experience, but I'm also of the belief this doesn't need to be 100% the exact same game. I mean, I feel like to remake a game, you should be adding things to enhance the experience. And for me personally, I feel like voice acting could, if it was kept to cutscenes, just like it was in Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom. I think it would only enhance the Ocarina of Time experience, if anything. Like when we get the creation of Hyrule cutscene, or when, spoiler alert, there's the big Chic Zelda reveal towards the end. Things like that. I feel like big moments throughout the story could actually be enhanced by getting voice acting. I feel like it would almost help to just make it even more immersive, make it feel more real. I don't know. I've kind of shifted my opinion. I wasn't a big fan of voice acting in Zelda at first, but I genuinely feel like it could enhance this experience.
I want voice acting for one reason and one reason alone, and that is Ganondorf. I am so
Valid.
hyped.
Very valid.
First off, if they do this, who they would cast him as, or who, would play him, and just where they're going to take it. Because with Tears of the Kingdom especially, we all love Matt Mercer. I mean, he absolutely knocked it out of the park. But this Ganondorf is, kind of different in my mind. He's
intense.
He is. And he's a little more like sniveling, I think. Maybe he'd have a less deep voice. I don't know.
No, I need it deep and bassy. I do.
I know. I love my Ganny deep and bassy for sure. I do think it would be good to kind of not do the Skyrim thing where every line of dialogue is voiced. I kind of feel like that can get a little bit just kind of too much. That's just my opinion though. But if they take the approach of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, I would sincerely enjoy that.
Yeah, I think that's like a good sweet spot. I don't need to necessarily hear what, the random guy juggling in Castletown, the two guys juggling, I don't necessarily need to hear them talk, but I do want to hear like the sages and Zelda and Ganondorf, of course. You
don't want to hear Navi talking to you all the time. I guess that's not something that I'm very interested in or keen on seeing. So yeah, let's skip the voice acting. Or again, to Gabe Bora, like, did you get all of that? And then you hit B by by accident, and then no.
The next generation needs to experience what we experienced with that.
Exactly. They need to struggle. A mix. I would love a mix. For example, when you're officially learning all the songs, and when you're talking to Sheik when he is quoting everything as we remember. I think that will be like a sweet spot for us to hear like full voice acting, the Chamber of Sages, and talking to the sages like you mentioned, Cap. Like that's something that I will love to see. But everything else, like it could easily be just dialogue.
You brought up Navi before, and in the original, she does have some snippets of voice, but even just like her going like, "Hey, watch out," things like that. There's little snippets of actual voice, but her voice is so high pitched that if she has fully read lines of dialogue, I feel like they'd have to change the way her voice is done, because I think it would just get so irritating. Like, people give Navi she's got a bad rap. I don't think she's that bad, but she will be if they do that. If every line, every hint she gives you is read in such a shrill, high-pitched voice, I will mute the game.
Also, I do want to add, I think that they're going to be able to reach a wider audience because of the different languages that they have. So
Yeah.
I feel that voice acting should be added or included because, as I mentioned earlier, we didn't have that back in the day. So being able to play the game on different languages will be great, will be ideal for a wider audience.
Yeah, that's exciting because I know like the Switch Zelda titles had a lot of language options. I think they just showed Star Fox has a bunch of language options as well that are fully voice acted. And even the animation is, at least if what I saw in the direct is accurate, the animation for the characters speaking matches the voice acting of each language in Star Fox, which I was like, whoa, that's very good, attention to detail. So I'm very curious what they'll do with it there.
I think I would be more surprised if there wasn't voice acting. But I do think it'll be something like everyone else has said, where it's relegated to cutscenes. I also wouldn't be surprised if they maybe turned more moments into cutscenes. So maybe we care about Malin more than Nintendo does. But if it's like when you first meet Malin or something, that becomes a cutscene where she's voiced or something. I would love that. Yeah, I don't know if Nintendo feels the same way. But I still don't think they've figured voice acting out broadly, at least in English. So I think it'll be fine, the actual delivery of the lines. It'll be interesting to see how they navigate Sheik without giving anything away. So I think that might be the one I'm looking forward to.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't expect the complete everything is voice acted.
I'm very curious how many people are going to actually get that plot twist. We kind of take the whole thing, Zelda Sheik thing, for granted nowadays. But, there's going to be people playing this game for the first time. I'd be excited to see people have that moment of being like, oh, what? Or if it's more predictable than I'm giving it credit for. I don't know.
Yeah, or even if they played Smash, because for a while Sheik and Zelda were interchangeable. Yeah.
I know they separated them for some
I think in
games.
4,
is
maybe,
in
or
4.
Brawl. But
For sure in Melee and Brawl, I think they're the same character. I'm pretty sure Smash 4 they separated them. I wonder if they recombined or kept them separate for Ultimate.
No, Ultimate they're separated too. But I just wonder how, like, Fox and Falco are probably more popular because of Smash and not as many people playing Star Fox. It'll be interesting how much in the ether the Zelda Sheik connection is to people who aren't familiar with the game.
I wonder, yeah. That'll be really interesting to see. The Sheik thing isn't a terrible segue anyways. I am curious about how people feel about this because it's something I've seen, I think it got brought up a bit earlier as well, but it's something I've seen debated a lot in comments where some people are saying it's going to just be graphics, it's going to be one-to-one, and people saying, oh, it's going to be a full reimagining. And I think it's too early for people to be saying things so definitively because we've barely seen anything. But how faithful do we want this remake to be to the original? How much you would want to see changed or kept the same, and what specific things you would be looking for in those changes? But yeah, just how are we feeling about the whole remake versus reimagining side of things?
I would love it if the lore was deepened but not changed. Perhaps we'll learn a little bit more about Link's mother and how she became wounded, or just more about the Hyrulean Civil War and how all of that started. But as far as the lore goes, I definitely don't want anything changed, as, this story's been cemented into the timeline, basically, and in our minds and in our considerations of the lore for so long. I think if they do change anything, a lot of people would have a hard time accepting it, might even flat out deny it,
It's me. I would have a hard time. So go on, sorry.
Yeah, I would too. So in that aspect, I would be totally okay with, just sort of adding things or just giving us a little more detail. And then as far as the one-to-one graphics, things like that, they called it Ocarina of Time Reborn, right? It's reborn is the word they used, at least in English. I sort of think that gives us a clue as to how they're going to approach this, because a rebirth, it's going to have the same foundation, but it's going to be different in some sense. I think they're going to be very careful about how they approach that. I have a lot of faith in them, I guess. I know some people don't, but I definitely do. I think that they've proven themselves enough, for me at least. The only thing that I worry about, if you want to use the word worry, is changing lore, but I really don't think that's going to happen.
Fair. I do worry about maybe people putting a little more stock than is necessary into that phrasing. Not to knock your point, but I almost feel like it feels like PR, like marketing speak, instead of just being like Ocarina of Time remake, you know, they're trying to like flavor up the tweet a little more, you know, is I guess.
Pizzazz.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like saying, oh, this game will be reborn is more dramatic than just saying we're remaking Ocarina of Time.
Yeah.
But, you know,
You
like...
never know with them, though. Like, sometimes they say things and they mean it, and then other times they just say things. Like,
exactly.
that is where I lose a little bit of trust.
100%.
I think it'll be 1-to-1, but it's weird. Everything we've seen so far is different. The tapestry doesn't exist in the original game, symbol on his hand, even stuff like he's not wearing his hat when he's asleep. So I hope they don't change anything, because I think that would be very strange if they did. And I do think as a community, we always assume they're gonna like fix all the lore and expand on all these things that don't make sense or we need to know more about, and then they never do. Like, it's like Nintendo feels like they don't care about these things as much as we do. And I know I'll get crap in the comments for saying that, but I think it'll be 1-to-1. But again, I just think it's weird that everything we've seen has been different. Part of it is me just sort of managing my expectations, because like,
That's fair. Yeah.
man, I want them to explain the downfall timeline ending, and I want them to reconcile all of the differences between this battle and the backstory to A Link to the Past. Every time a game comes out, like even with the Age of Calamity, Age of Imprisonment, like there's just so much hype leading up to it, and we're hoping that they're gonna give us the answers that we're wanting, and then those things don't happen. Like even with Age of Imprisonment, it's like, I don't really know what we learned. I don't know that I was chomping at the bit to know the origins of the ancient tree stump, but we got it. We learned how the Zonai fell. I don't know we got anything meaningful besides that. And so it just doesn't feel like Nintendo's as invested in these things as we want them to be sometimes. So I guess I'm managing my expectations. Ultimately, I guess that's my answer.
That's fair.
But I also wonder, like, who made this game, right? Because we don't know if it was outsourced. You know, is Grezzo or whatever, or whoever made it, are they allowed to go in and just drastically change things? Like, I would think that maybe they would be hesitant to do so.
Then Grezzo did give us Null, so I almost wonder if it was a third party working on this, or a partnered studio or something, if they would be more willing to go in on the lore than Nintendo in-house would be. Because Nintendo often, by design, kind of intentionally keeps things vague, whereas I think a third party studio would be like, oh, we're big Zelda fans and we want to get into it, you know? I'm just speculating, of course, but Nintendo would still have to approve it all, but yeah.
Again, I kind of wanted to echo what Rin said, actually. I feel like fleshing things out is probably the best approach for any sort of like major changes in terms of faithfulness. I'm actually currently working on a video talking about exactly this. I think this will probably be out by the time that video is out, but it is sort of just going into things like that, like what points of the story could be changed for the better, because I think that's an important thing when you're talking about like what would change. Would it actually be for the better, or would you just be changing it for the sake of changing it? I think it's like a delicate thing they'll need to balance, but I'm totally on board for adding in some new lore, like with the Civil War, Link's mother, and just particularly the backstory of Ocarina of Time, I hope is expanded upon a bit more. And it was probably because of when the game came out, they couldn't fit a bunch of information about the backstory into a Nintendo 64 game, which, you know, makes sense. But I think in the modern experience, that could definitely benefit the whole game. It won't affect anything that actually happens actively. It's just fleshing things out.
So talking about how faithful I want them to be, of course, me being biased, I'm gonna go like, yeah, they have to be 100% faithful. Do I want them to change anything? No, I don't. However, that's me being biased again, but being realistic. That is something that I think it's going to be necessary eventually for the sake of, again, more people being able to experience this immersiveness that we experienced back in 1998. Circling a little bit back to Ocarina of Time 3D, correct me if I'm wrong or keep me honest here, but I think that it was originally marketed as a remake, even though on the box itself says remaster and not remake. And a lot of people still believe believe to this day that that was a remake. And it was just, remastering everything, but it does have like the sounds and everything. It's exactly the same as the original Nintendo 64. So that is definitely not a remake. So on this particular case, I feel that they really have to change a lot of things. We want to know what happens to Link's mother and what happens in the war and everything, but I don't think that Nintendo will take that route. However, I'm a little bit scared because, Ren, you did brought up that they are using that word reborn, that they're gonna take like a Final Fantasy remake kind of path, and that's what I'm scared of, because we have 3 different Final Fantasy VII games: Remake, Rebirth, and now Revelation. So there was some rumors out there that that treatment might happen in Ocarina of Time, which to me makes no sense because they will need to add a lot more content, but that would give them like an opportunity to do so if they were reimagining everything. Also, as a Zelda fan, I know that we want to know like everything that's happened and we want to know every detail of the lore, but we have to like put that aside and think back in the day, they did an amazing job merging both gameplay and story or lore together, which we don't get that often nowadays. But at the end of the day, the approach has always been gameplay first and then the story after. So if I'm being very, very realistic, I think that that's going to be the path. And I think that we need to make peace with that. So coming from someone that experienced Ocarina of Time for the very first time and how big it meant to me, I also have to admit and understand and accept that may happen.
No, I think that's super legit to sort of separate what we want versus what is realistic.
Yes.
Yeah.
As someone who, like I said, didn't ask for this, I feel very free in terms of the expectation because I'm not expecting one thing or the other from it. In conversations I've had, people have been like, if it's 1-to-1, I don't want it. And other people have been like, if it's not completely overhauled, I don't want it. So I think from the outset, and Tears of the Kingdom has taught me a very valuable lesson. I am trying to keep my expectations to nothing and just be able to judge it on what it is. The route I'm trying to take is like, it's a film adaptation of a book. So I'm sensitive to they shouldn't change the details of the lore, but I don't think every detail in the game needs to be the same if the tone or the spirit of the game is intact. And I think that also comes with changes, things they add, but also things they subtract. So I think the big thing people have been talking about is like the graveyard and the bottom of the well and the shadow temple. And is it going to be sanitized or isn't it going to be sanitized? I want Ganondorf to spit red blood. I know he's not gonna, but and like that's the other thing too, is that there's versions of the game, and then when you talk about faithfulness, which version of the game are you faithful to? I would prefer not to have glowing walls in the water temple, but that
Ditto,
is what
honestly.
I think that's the other thing that's been brought up too, is the idea about no loading screens and the challenges that come with that. And then if you don't have a loading screen into Lon Lon Ranch, I think it's probably bigger on the inside than it is in Hyrule Field. So do you have to expand Hyrule Field? All this stuff. A bunch of details that come up that sort of have a ripple effect that change a bunch of things. I think the downfall timeline, I'm not the biggest timeline guy, but obviously Ocarina of Time is the linchpin in all the timeline shenanigans.
Yeah.
And I think that the downfall timeline aspect is interesting. I would guess that if they referenced it at all, which I don't think they'll do, it'll be like there'll be an extra cutscene in the final battle with Ganondorf, and it'll be like, this is the extra cutscene, which just feels like scraps enough to appease people that wanted to see it, but not enough to be something satisfying. And I don't know if Nintendo has the will or the narrative fortitude to actually make that satisfying. And I also don't think this is real, but from the teaser, the way it's set up is they give us this tapestry, and then the tapestry fades into, we think is actual probably gameplay footage. And I think it would be interesting if the framing of the game, and a lot of people have talked about Zelda as a whole as it's a legend being told. But if the framing of the game is through like somebody's telling the story, they're using this tapestry to tell the story of Ocarina of Time. And that's a way of them basically covering themselves to say, well, we made some changes, but it's actually a telling of the story, not Ocarina of Time. again. I don't think that's actually going to happen. I think basically the teaser is just what it is. It's a teaser. And I expect that contingent of people are going to be disappointed on one side if it's the same. A whole different contingent are going to be disappointed if it's too different. And it's just going to be whatever it's going to be. And let come what may.
You brought up a really interesting point because that's a topic I've seen a lot, just as a generalization, of course. But, you have a camp where people are like, if they're going to change so much, just make a new game. I don't want it to be a remake. And then other people are like, oh, what's the point of remaking it if you don't make those changes? There's going to be no way to please everyone. It's just not going to happen.
I hope Nintendo chooses a direction and just sticks to it as opposed to trying to placate everyone.
No, absolutely.
Which I think, like you said, is impossible anyway. So why try?
Yeah, I almost think I would respect it more, even if it wasn't the direction I wanted them to go in. But if they were like, hey, we have a vision and we're sticking to our guns on it and we're going all in on it, I would respect that more than them trying to do a weird balancing act. Do you know what I mean?
I think if you swing and you miss, it's better than not swinging.
Exactly.
For Adam's sake, though, I hope they expand the fishing hole.
Oh my god, yes.
Sorry.
That's so considerate that you've actually thought of me there. That makes me so happy. I didn't want to get onto my Zelda fishing ramblings, but I do love fishing in Zelda.
That's great. It's so funny, the weird adversarial love-hate relationship I have with specifically the Ocarina of Time fishing hole. I'm in there and I hate it, but then when I'm out of there, I love it and I want to go back. I don't know how to describe it.
You miss it once you're out there.
Yeah. Even actually Link's Awakening, again, another great remake, which is mostly faithful, did things like that where the fishing minigame got some added depth. There's a few spots, there's an extra heart piece that they kind of slotted into there. I think that's not a bad sweet spot to as far as what changes could be made, I guess,
Do you think there'll be a jump button?
I hope not.
I kind of think that Ocarina of Time's level design necessitates, because in the beta versions of the game, there was a jump button. And at some point along development, they changed it to the auto jump that we now have. I think a lot of the level design, especially your hopping platforms in the Fire Temple and stuff, there's some jumps that Link only very barely makes it, that I think swapping the auto jump out for a jump button would cause issues with that, I guess, if that makes sense. That also kind of opens up the idea of would they just change the level design to facilitate that? There's so much Breath of the Wildification is the term I keep hearing, where I'm I hope they don't. I hope they don't, because the level design would fall apart and these dungeons are so good. People brought up climbing walls. Breath of the Wild is a game built around the idea that you can climb walls, so it works there, but Ocarina of Time is not. And all of these dungeons would collapse, not literally, but the progression through them would fall apart if you could do things like that. In terms of the jump button, I kind of hope they don't. You can do some manual jumping in Ocarina of Time already, and I think that's enough.
You don't roll and jump to jump higher or further, because that's what I do.
Oh yeah, you do that because there's a little bit of momentum in there, but it's still there's that auto jump. You don't. That's still one input. That's the roll, and then you hit the ledge, and Link jumps on his own. Skyward Sword actually has kind of a forward jump that controls the same as his backflip. I could see that, but I kind of feel that's the extent of it. I don't want them to take out the auto jump at least. So
now that you're mentioning Skyward Sword, they did add the Hylian shield from Skyward Sword in the logo as well.
Yes.
One thing that everybody kind of noticed. And also we have to keep in mind that whoever's going to be taking care of this remake or reimagine or a rebirth of Ocarina of Time, Monolith Software feels like they're going to be the ones taking care of it. And in Skyward Sword, they were the supporting team. They weren't really the ones doing the whole HD version of Skyward Sword. Mm-hmm. But what I'm trying to say is that I don't really know what to expect, especially because this is going to be the first 3D remake. Also, this might mean that eventually we're going to get Majora's Mask as well. Both Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time are basically the same engine. Most likely they'll do the same with Majora's Mask, right? So I'm actually very, very curious as to how they're going to do this. And also, I think Eiji Aonuma has had enough of many, many people bombarding him probably everywhere about what he's going to do about the Water Temple, because we all know that he was, designing all the dungeons. So especially Water Temple was kind of special for him because he was very, motivated for his love of diving. And we're going to see diving in this game, which we don't have in Tears of the Kingdom or Breath of the Wild. So we will get it back on this new version. But then again, they added, I think, underwater exploration diving for Pocopia, right? I think that's the most recent one that they announced.
Oh, yeah.
So they're getting there. And with the, Nintendo Switch 2 hardware, I think they're going to do great. But I don't know how they're going to fix the water temple for lack of a better term. We don't know anything about this game yet. And I'm just hoping for a Zelda Direct. Just for us to know and answer all of our questions, right? So
Yeah.
let's see.
My
I just
spicy
hope
hot take.
Aonuma realizes. Oh, sorry. I was gonna say I just hope Aonuma realizes that the water temple is perfect.
No, that's
Just let
exactly
us
what I was gonna
the
say.
booth. And-
Yeah.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
exactly.
So good.
The water temple is actually really good. But I saw this post online when someone was essentially like, how did people beat the water temple back in the day? This is ludicrous kind of thing, right? And I was like, these dungeons are really elaborate. But that's, well, for one thing, I feel like that's a good thing. And two, the game does give you everything you need. It is frustrating to hit a locked door and not have a key, but the game also does give you a compass that tells you where all the treasure chests are, which have keys in them, So it's like the tools are there. I think people don't check their maps enough. Just to throw shade. In short, check your map.
In short, you're saying get good. That's what you're saying.
I'm saying you use the tools at your disposal, Like,
Utilize what you've been given.
yes, exactly. Like, in terms of like the get good conversation, like I think there are games where like that is valid, where I think the phrasing is kind of blasé and a little rude, like to tell people get good, skill issue, like that always rubs me the wrong way.
Yeah.
But I do genuinely think that there is satisfaction to
The
suffering and then overcoming a challenge is great. I wouldn't even say it's like a skill issue as much as like are you using the resources
Pay
at your
attention.
disposal? Yeah,
Basically
That's
what it is,
also
pay
another
attention.
thing.
Yeah, I have to wonder though, like for the kids who only played Breath, Wild, and Tears of the Kingdom and how those dungeons are,
Yeah.
how some of them will do, moving into these Ocarina of Time dungeons, if they're largely the same.
Good. Play the Ocarina of Time remake and join me and Cap with the water temple supremacy.
Yes.
No, I think I want to bring up that specific moment where you play the ocarina to increase the water level in the second level, and there's a stupid key right under the platform. That's like the most common that everybody missed. And then if you play the 3D version, the camera actually kind of points down like here, dive here, because this is where you're gonna find your missing key.
I think the 3DS version overcorrects a little. There's a happy medium, I think, to be had in that moment. There's that one, and then there's a key behind a bombable wall in the room you meet Ruto the first time. I think those are the two that really trip people up, but it's a really great dungeon. And I think that like the glowing lines someone brought up, like the 3DS version added like these weird Tron lines to the water temple, which feels sort of incongruous with the rest of the architecture. I wouldn't need them to go that far. I think just giving people a little nudge to a couple of those keys is all you need. Hey, my kid beat the water temple. I beat the water temple as a kid. I used to go over to my neighbor's house and beat the water temple for him because he couldn't do it. But you know what?
I'll do it for you. Give me the controller.
Did you charge him any money? Did you make some money?
You know what? In hindsight, I should, because like literally, like he would phone our house. Like this was before cell phones, because I'm old.
Yeah, you won't call.
He would call, be like, "Can you come over and beat the water temple?" and I would.
You told him your rates.
I should have, if I had thought of that. I was just in it for the love of the game.
Pat, what if they take out the compass altogether?
I will riot. I am a compass stan. I think it's great. I think it's a great tool. It's a great item. You found this thing from exploring. Here's a wealth of information that will be useful to you as to reward that. I think that's great. There's not a good segue for this time, but this kind of piggybacks off of the topic of being faithful to the lore and stuff like that. But in the teaser, we saw the Triforce on Link's hand briefly. Fades in, glows for a bit, fades out. Many people rightfully raised an eyebrow to that when watching the trailer, like, oh, that's kind of not how that goes in the original. What I'm curious about is, do you think there is any significance behind that? Do you think that makes sense or doesn't make sense? Is there some greater implication that comes with that? How do you guys feel about that specifically?
I think it's just the mark of the hero. I think it's just Link being called to his destiny. I know there's a lot of people who are saying it has to be that he has the Triforce, but it's like, well, then what is this game, right? Because like the first 3 dungeons, the whole point is so he can get into the door of time and then Ganondorf follows him in, spoiler alert, and that's when the Triforce splits and everyone gets their piece. So if he already has it, like, what even is this game, right? People say, like, when he has the mark, he has the Triforce, and that's the lore, and then they'll use that to say, like, that's why Zelda must have the Triforce in Breath of the Wild, and people point to the mark on his hand in Skyward Sword. Monster Maze made a video of, like, well, he gets the Triforce in the Silent Realm, which is, like, within him. So technically he had the Triforce all along. He's just, like, awakening it. I tend to just look at it as the mark of the hero. Same as the backstory to Zelda 2. Impa gives him like a scroll that only he can read, and it reveals that the king cast a spell or something that makes it such that a mark appears on the hand of the hero who is destined for the Triforce of Courage. Even though technically that hero had the Triforce of Power and Wisdom from the first Zelda game, because it is the same hero from the very first Zelda game. I can see like both arguments, ultimately is what I'm saying. Like even in the mark of the hero in the Oracle games, right? He gets the mark after he approaches the Triforce, but he doesn't have the Triforce from that point on, as far as I know. And then he uses that mark throughout the games, like to open certain obstacles that are in the way. I don't think things are consistent enough to be like, oh, he has to have the Triforce at the beginning. And plus, again, I just think it would totally break the game. Like, why even call it Ocarina of Time? What would be the point of getting the spiritual stones that whole first half of the game? I'm just real hesitant on like the people who are saying like it has to be one thing. I think things are more fluid than that.
I literally wrote down in my notes, this is the goddess's way of marking him for it. And I think this is maybe an example of how they might be not expanding, but clarifying the lore a little bit, especially about the Triforce, because you wonder, like, before whoever gets a piece of the Triforce gets a piece of the Triforce, does the Triforce know where it's going to go? Or is this an absolute destined event, which I've always assumed it was, but this would kind of clarify that. And I think that's great.
You bring up destiny, and I think of in the original Ocarina of Time, the dialogue with the Deku Tree, he kind of refers to Link as like this child of destiny. Like he knows that Link is going to be the hero of time. And then also Sheik has dialogue about like the legend of the hero of time, or like the prophecy of the hero of time. When Link re-emerges in the future as adult Link, you know, Sheik is like, oh yeah, you do fit the description of this prophecy, basically. So yeah, I think there is like an element of destiny for sure that's in there. Like also the fact that you had notes ahead of time for this is so flattering.
I gotta be prepared.
Love it.
I personally think that they just added that for the sake of everyone to understand the meaning of this game. Because if we talk numbers, Breath of the Wild has been the most successful game when it comes to sales. For Breath of the Wild, I think that even though we never actually see the Triforce, I think that people would have a little bit more difficulty to understand the meaning of this game if they weren't adding something that has to do with, you know, everything that they know so far. So I believe that they just simply added that to the teaser for everybody to be on the same page, because we know what this means. Like, we know because we've been there. We played the game. We know what they're saying when they're, you know, just showing us the Kokiris and also the Great Deku Tree, and we see Link just having the nightmare, because that's exactly how the game starts, right? We know that. But what about everybody else? So it doesn't mean anything to them unless they see something familiar. And the Triforce, even though it wasn't very present in Breath of the Wild, they have seen the Triforce, or at least the Hylian crests. So they know this is important. That's the only reason why I feel they added that. Unless they change the whole story, which we're afraid of, that might. So if that's the case, it wouldn't really make a lot of sense. But I think that on the trailer, that's the only reason why we see it there.
Just sort of throw this out there as well, is that in that moment, presumably if this is matching the original game, that is when Link is having that nightmare, like you said, right at the beginning of the game. And that nightmare is a premonition. This is something I always think is really interesting about Ocarina of Time, is that Link has a premonition of a future event. He sees a vision of the future. It's a very literal depiction of the future. Like, he literally sees beat for beat exactly how it's going to be. Zelda, meanwhile, also has premonitions. When you speak to her, she tells you about her own nightmares, but there's so much more metaphorical like dark clouds representing a person and then light shining out of a forest representing another person, and she has to kind of make sense of it all. I think that's something that's really interesting between those two characters. Like, they're dynamic. They both seem to have some sort of ability to have these premonitions, but they take different forms. That said, if Link is having a vision of the future and he doesn't have the Triforce yet, but then the Triforce mark appears on his hand while he's seeing the future, it's sort of like a calling of like he's going to get it. That makes sense to me.
I think, sort of like has already been said, the way I sort of interpreted the whole hand thing, because obviously my instant thought was, that's not right, that's not how the original game was, what's that doing there? But the sort of way I interpreted it personally was, I think it's just a sort of foreshadowing detail, and don't think it means he has the Triforce. I mean, he's a kid who can see visions of Ganondorf's evil takeover. I don't think it's too far-fetched to say it's just a little sign of what's to come more than anything.
I don't have anything world-shattering to offer. I think Adam and others are on the same page where it's just a quick and direct way to say this game is different than Breath of the Wild. This is a special boy, and this is why. Not necessarily this is the way it's going to be in game, you know?
Our special boy.
He's
our special boy.
He is. I just quickly, as we've crossed the 2-hour threshold here, want to check in if anyone else has any other stray thoughts, talking points you want to go over, pipe dreams, wild speculation, anything like that you want to get out there.
This is nothing, but I've been thinking about it a lot. Generally, I am very interested in seeing how they interpret the other environments and the other characters in this new, more powerful style. But I'm really, really, really interested in knowing what the Rainbow Room, that secret room at the beginning of the forest meadow that you can bomb into that has that weird rainbow texture on all the walls.
Yeah.
If it'll be there and what it'll look like.
That and Chamber of Sages I want to see, because that's always been one for me where it's like the floor is water, or like what's going on. Right. I kind of want to see how that gets adapted or reinterpreted for sure. Yeah, some of the grottos in Ocarina of Time are bizarre. So yeah, I know exactly the one you mean though. It's got like the Wolfos and then like it's like 50 rupees or something.
and you just bomb the middle of the beginning part of the Sacred Forest Meadow. It's very strange. It's all very strange, but I hope they keep it.
I hope it's still very strange.
Yes, exactly.
I would say that Twilight Princess is probably the grittiest Zelda game, but Ocarina of Time also has this, I would say, grittiness as well, this darkness, not just visually, but like emotionally. And I really hope that that is continued. I hope that it's expanded upon and that we're really going to be like just as emotionally impacted, if not more so. That's my biggest hope, I think, for this game.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's, someone found that the European age rating is already out. I think Swag brought this up earlier this week, and it's looking at 12 plus. Yeah, it makes me wonder, like, because I think if they're trying to aim for like an E rating, that it'll be a little sanitized, which I don't want. But
I don't think so.
Yeah, if it's looking at Peggy 12 already, then it's like, oh well, okay, maybe there's some stuff where it's not like an outright horror game, but like maybe the Shadow Temple is still creepy.
Yes, Shadow Temple is my favorite temple. Bottom of the Well is my favorite part of the game as well. So yeah, I'm so looking forward to that, because I was a bit concerned about that, because yes, I don't think that it's going to be possible for it to be E for everyone, and I personally feel a little bit of relief that that's not going to be the case, because yes, it does tap into very, I wouldn't say horrible, but in a way there are some things that it's not ideal for younger audiences, right? So for me, Ocarina of Time, when you see all of these emotional cutscenes, and even though it was a very old game where you were not able to see that kind of realism, but there is still a lot of emotion that you see either, on Link or any of the other characters. Like, for example, when Link tries to help Sheik, he's getting thrown by the shadow from the Shadow Temple. Even though it was a very old game, that kind of emotion and details we're going to be able to see. So I'm very excited to see how they're going to do that. I guess the last thing would be like the boss fights, the Dongo Cavern and then Volvagia and all of those amazing boss fights. They're just going to look amazing on, Reimagine or whatever, Remake. Yes. I'm so looking forward to that. Like,
I just know Saria specifically is going to break my heart. She's a character that is like oft almost neglected in the conversation of like great
Yes.
Ocarina of Time characters, but like being this character of like Link's childhood friend, and when you talk to her and she's got this big smile, and then you see sort of this somberness to her, when like Link leaves her on the bridge and goes out into Hyrule Field and she can't follow, and you're just left lingering on her stare, and that sort of, like I said, that somberness, that was like a moment that always like really stuck with me of like, one thing, it's a character moment for Link. He has to leave his life behind basically to embark on this quest. But at the same time, it's like who he's leaving behind too. And then you see her again as a sage later, and she never really shakes that somberness, I think. I'm sure she's going to break my heart in this game.
And then we
full
get
stop.
the Ocarina of Time and we forget about Zydia's gift. Like it was nothing, right?
Fairy Ocarina, never heard of it. This one's blue, I mean.
It's shiny.
I'll bring it up one more time.
Oh, yes.
I want to see some improved fishing hole mechanics.
Yes.
It's gotta be said. It's the biggest part of the game, really. I want to see a Master Rod.
Phrasing?
Yeah, maybe they could change the name, but
Oh, no.
The idea is solid.
We're almost 2 hours 20, so we'll put a wrap on things here. Again, phrasing. But before we do, I'll give everyone a chance to, once again, tell our viewers where to find you, all that good stuff. First, I have a message from Ed that says, tell HG, love you from Ed.
oh, I really appreciate that.
He gave me no context for that.
I love him as well. He's great.
Thank you all for joining me for this discussion. I think, Gabe, if people heard you and they liked you, where can people find you on the internet? Is there anything you want to plug? Any exciting projects you got coming out? Or
Yeah, you can find me YouTube at Gabora, Gabeora. Also on TikTok, same username. And yeah, like I said earlier, I'm struggling to put out content lately just because I've been too busy, but I hope to get back at it soon. Loved being here. Great talking to all of you. I really appreciate it.
thank you, man. HG.
First of all, thank you very much for having me on. It's always a pleasure to join these discussions and talk to other avid Zelda fans about whatever's going on at the time. You can find me at Hyrule Gamer on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, all the good stuff. And yeah, I'm working on some more Ocarina of Time videos, just sort of discussions while we don't know too much right now, but a lot more Ocarina of Time content to come later this year.
Lily.
Yes. Oh no, it was just such a pleasant discussion, to be honest. So thank you very much for having me over. And I always get very, very excited when we have this kind of opportunity to discuss Zelda. You can find me as Lily Hyrule on YouTube, and actually I am currently working on some Ocarina of Time videos as well, especially for those that might be interested to learn a little bit about ins and outs of the game, because maybe you want to try or play the remake for the first time, but you still want to learn a little bit more about the original games. That's something that I'm working on. I'm actually streaming Majora's Mask because I recently finished Ocarina of Time. So yeah, that's a whole different game, but I'm live there once a week. I also started a new podcast. That's every Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern time on my channel. We don't really focus a lot into Zelda, but if I'm talking, most likely I'm going to be talking about Zelda. That's all I can share. Thank you very much again.
Thank you, Lily. Little Bean Green.
Little Bean Green. Same name on YouTube is where you can find me. Thanks, as always, Cap, for being a wonderful host, and to all of the other members here for being so enthusiastic and so pleasant. It's always a pleasure to be here, so thanks again. I will say, too, I got some irons in the fire. I've been MIA for a little bit. I just beat Trial of the Sword for the first time, so I've got a bunch of stuff coming down the pipeline that's going to be all over the place.
Very nice. So for the first time, there you go. GG's for sure.
I've never played the DLC until last week.
Oh,
Nice.
all right. I'm looking forward to hearing what you got to say about it. Last but not least, of course, Rin.
Yeah, this was really great. I'm not a theory channel or anything, so I feel like kind of an outlier sometimes, but I am still so excited to talk about Zelda, as always. As far as projects I have going on, there is currently premiering a series written by our good friend Tetra. It's really wonderful, so if anyone is interested in that, I am over at Rin's Legendarium on YouTube.
Once again, a huge special thanks to all of my panelists for joining this discussion. Links are down below in the description for each of their channels. Special thanks also goes out to my patrons and channel members who make all of this possible. You guys are awesome. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your day.
Bye. Bye. Thank you.